Hi everybody back in New Zealand. I'm still in Indianapolis at the Social Conservatives Policy Conference, and I've come across a good old mate, Walt Heyer, who some of you will know. He spoke at the Forum on the Family. Have you spoken twice?
Twice. Yeah.
Wow. I've
Yeah,
invited him back.
7 years ago, and then you had me back 2 years ago. So
Okay.
you're a glutton for punishment.
Okay, well, I've come to see you this time, and the reason I wanted to catch up with you is because you've just released this new book, Embracing God's Design. In fact, you sent me a free copy. I haven't read it yet. It's on my reading list. So I wanted to find out a little bit about this new book because I mean it's another book that you've written. You've written a number of fantastic books. But look, some people won't know who Walt Heyer is, so maybe can you just give us a Reader's Digest version of who is Walt Heyer?
Yeah, quickly speaking, I was cross-dressing at the age of 4 years old, and my grandmother had made me a purple chiffon dress. I became very encouraged by her nurturing me in this dress. At a 4-year-old kid does not know anything about consequences or what it's going to bring. I made Grandma happy. I was happy. So wearing a dress then became this issue that I had and enjoyed it. But it was a little secret she kept from my mom and dad. So Grandma was doing this kind of in secret. But what I realize so much, Bob, is that today we realize that cross-dressing is really emotional and psychological child abuse. It's really a way to harm a child's development, early development about his identity. And so the short story is that issue caused me to suffer from an identity issue all the way up until I was in my late 30s, early 40s, and I went to a gender therapist, which anybody listening to this knows what a gender therapist is. I went to one in 1981 who diagnosed me with gender dysphoria and told me that hormones and surgery was the only way for me to resolve this. Of course, we know that is absolute insane, and we know that you don't resolve emotional and psychological child abuse with hormones and surgery. And so what the book is about my life, but more than that, it's about the fact, as you're well aware of, I started a website, sexchangeregret.com, many, many years ago, and have worked with thousands of people. And so in working with those people, what I've found out is they all had some early childhood experience. It wasn't always being cross-dressed, but they suffered from maybe their mom died or their dad died or they were in foster care or dad was there's some issue that happened early in life that caused them to have an identity confusion. And so sometimes it came out that they would get on the internet and look at pornography on the internet, or they joined a group of other people and that identified as transgender. So what the book is about, this book is important because it takes on 3 levels. One, my co-author, Jennifer Bowens, is actually a trauma therapist. And the issues I suffered were trauma. Anytime you cross-dress a child, believe it or not, parents, when you cross-dress your child and affirm them, you are causing them trauma. You're abusing them psychologically and emotionally. And so what we've done is we've taken the biblical perspective, and it's a 3-layered thing: the biblical perspective, Jennifer Bowens, the trauma perspective, and then me as someone who experienced this, now 80 years of experience in this arena at 84 years old, starting in 1944. So we brought that together in this fantastic book. And I just had someone write me last night that had read it and said, this book is spectacular. I really do believe, it's not just because my name's on it, but this book is really one of the key books that will help anybody have a better understanding of how to navigate this and even how to talk to a person who's struggling and have a better understanding of why they're suffering, and then even better than that, how you can help them.
It's funny, interesting. I recently interviewed a detransitioner, a young woman, and she said that one of the key phrases that she heard that was the turning point for her to revert to her biological true self was someone said to her that the Lord said, "Come as you are, come as you are." And look, I just wanted to get back to the area around the trauma and the mental illness. The argument is that it's not actually the gender dysphoria that's the issue, it's all the comorbid disorders. There's other stuff going on in the mental sphere or childhood trauma as you suffered, and that's really the driving force for gender confusion. And when we don't deal with that and we just give puberty blockers and hormones and chop off healthy breasts and do top and bottom surgery, that doesn't solve the problem because the mental issues are still there. How common is that?
100%. Yeah. Here's the thing. And you touched on something that is so important in this area. Is that number one, what I have found out in the people that I've worked with, and that's all I can address. But in the thousands of people I've worked with, I haven't found one with gender dysphoria. They've had all other issues. They suffered from PTSD or obsessive compulsive disorder or body dysmorphia. I mean, there's so many other issues, or early childhood trauma, or they were addicted, some of them addicted to pornography in their teens, or they just wanted to join a group of people where they felt affirmed, and they then took on an identity because everybody took on a trans identity because everybody in the group had one, so that made them feel comfortable. So it's so critical for us in working with people, Bob. I always ask them, what caused you to not like who you are? How did you get there? And so it's the first time somebody asks them that question and they start thinking, why am I doing this? And so many of them have caught up on this stuff just going on the internet or because someone told them or because they're in pain. In my own life, I actually believe, Bob, I did this not because I wanted to be a woman, but what I have said to myself privately, and I'll say here publicly, I wanted to become the person who was not abused as a child. So taking on this new identity as Laura Jensen never was abused as a child. Walt was, and Walt didn't know how to resolve the abuse that he suffered. So it's the proper term for this is dissociative disorder. We dissociate from who we are to become, and that's commonplace for people who suffered early life issues. So there's a lot of language out there, but I think what's most important is to understand that we can help every one of them if we sit down and avoid the trap of using terms like gender dysphoria, because you're right. When you say it's all the other issues, some of them aren't drastic mental illness, but what they are is identity issues, and we talk about that in here. We find more people are struggling with identity issues that they have identified as a gender issue, which is not really a gender issue.
Right.
It's actually an issue of their identity. And so when we focus on identity, we can actually help them. And guess what? This is the most exciting part about it. If you work on the identity, you don't need to fix an identity with hormones and surgery.
That's right.
So I believe that they built this false narrative about gender dysphoria for the purpose of, there's only three things that happen. I always say this when I have a chance to. When you identify as someone different, you devalue who God made you to be. When you start to take hormones, you dehumanize who you are as God made you. And number three, when you have surgery, you begin to destroy who you are as God made you. So what happens as a person who goes through these procedures, what they really do is lose their ability to function as God designed them to function. Isn't that amazing when you think about it on that level? This is serious stuff, because many of the people who go through this, if they're a female, will never be able to become a mom and bear a child. A guy who goes through this, obviously, if he has all the surgeries, he's not going to be able to father a child. And I find in working with these, this is where they break down. They lied to me. They say, they lied to me. They didn't tell me about this. They didn't tell me there were consequences. And so the regret issues are huge, regardless of what anybody tells you. Regret is enormous. When you get 5, 6, 10 years out, I see a great number. You don't get it early on. You get people 3, 4, 5 years, and they're still in the happy stage. They're still in the honeymoon stage. But after a few years, you find the regret sets in. You probably found that with the people that you've spoken with. It just takes a few years, and they go, what happened? And so we need to help people understand critically that's an identity issue. It's not a gender issue. And because it's an identity issue, ladies and gentlemen, they don't need hormones and they don't need surgery. We just need to find out what caused them to not like who they are. Isn't that amazing?
And the other message that we're constantly getting is that they're a minority group, they've been persecuted, and the more we basically have to affirm and buy into what they want, and if we don't, we're being mean, we're being phobic, and we're making them think about committing suicide. That's kind of like what we're told. Either we accept their gender identity issues and that they have to change their sex. What's your response to that kind of intimidation of anyone who wants to speak up for biology?
Yeah, two things. One, I never had any indication before I had surgery that I was suicidal. After I had surgery and took hormones and identified as a female for about 3 years, I had 2 occasions where I attempted suicide. One, I was going to jump off a building. The other one, I tried to overdose on cocaine. And so here's the thing. The research shows, Sweden has shown that people who have the hormones and have the surgery are 19 times, you know this, 19 times more likely to commit suicide than somebody who doesn't have hormones and surgery.
And I think there was a more recent Finnish study that backed that up as well, wasn't there?
Yes. And so we know that we're actually endangering their life. Number one, by giving them the wrong hormones and doing surgery they don't need for an issue they don't have. Because it's not about gender, it's about identity. They don't need this. But the industry in the United States alone, Bob, is $4.4 billion. So when they hear a voice like mine telling you don't need hormones and surgery, they're looking at their $4.4 billion going down the drain, and they want to protect it by telling lies about what's happening. Fortunately, in the United States now, the gender clinics are closing. We've had 2 big closings just in the last couple of weeks. The largest one in Los Angeles, they found out that she had actually committed fraud by one report which she withheld from public knowledge that had information in it about the harm that was being done. She finally got exposed. That clinic went down, I think, 2 weeks ago. And I think there's another one in Chicago that went down just in the last few days.
And Tennessee before that?
And well, in Tennessee, they're trying to shut it down.
As a
I'm not sure it's
whistleblower,
gone down. But so I think, the truth will prevail. And the truth is that it's not about gender. You don't need hormones. You don't need surgery. And we don't need to devalue, dehumanize, and destroy children or adults. This is just as bad for adults. I've run into cases where the wife's talking to me about their husband of 20 years with 4 children, and he thinks he's transgender, and we find out that he suffered tremendous trauma early in life, but never went to a trauma therapist to have the trauma dealt with. And that's why Jennifer Bowens in this book talks, she is the trauma therapist, and then that's why we bring this to the people. So if you have somebody who says they're struggling with their gender or identity, then you most likely will find that they had some early childhood issues, or they were addicted to pornography, or that they just met a group of people that love bombed them about, hey, it's good to be transgender. I've had actually teachers tell me they have kids coming to them in our public schools saying, I'm afraid to not identify as a transgender. And they say, I don't want to be one, but I'm afraid to not identify as. So there's tremendous social pressure on kids in schools, in curriculum, to actually identify as a transgender when they really don't want to be one. So it's real critical. There isn't one person. I've worked with thousands for almost 20 years. I haven't found one person who needed the hormones or needed the surgery, and when they find out that they were lied to about the suicide issues or the fact that this was going to help them, they are more devastated, their lives are more ruined than if we'd have just told them this is an identity issue, let's find out how we can help you, and you can help them. Take the time to help them. That's what we need to do.
The researchers, the advocates, the lobbyists for this try to suggest that there are no detransitioners, there is no regret. Maybe it's 1%. What are they hiding?
Well, they're hiding from the fact that there are thousands and thousands. Go on Reddit, r/dtrans. The last time I looked, there were 60,000 on that one site.
Wow.
So we've and even in my own. Here's the thing. I'm glad you asked that, because at Sex Change Regret, I've worked with thousands, Bob, and including myself. Not one of us has ever been counted as somebody with regret or detrans. Not one of us. So here's the thing. If you don't count the people, you can keep the number pretty low, can't you?
Yeah.
Right? So that's what's happening. And there really is no, truthfully, there's no database for people to go to and collect this information. I work with people who are just, they go through this, they get their life back, but there's no place for them to register, oh, I'm one of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
And do they want to register? Do they just want to get back to normality?
I've actually had them say, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want people to know I went through it. I don't want my neighbors or friends to know what an idiot I was. Right? And so there's a lot of people that don't want to own up to the fact that they went through it.
Look, just finally, Walt, and you touched on this, it appears like we've got an upcoming conference that you spoke at a couple of years ago, and the theme of the conference is bravery in a cultural tipping point, or courage in a cultural tipping point. It feels like we're at a bit of a cultural tipping point with this issue, because when I first met you back in 2000, 10 years ago, it was kind of like there was this onslaught. There was Bruce Jenner. It was being rammed down, and you had to comply, or else you were cancelled off social media. The mainstream media would cancel you. And yet now you've got, as you said, Sweden speaking up. You've got Finnish studies. You've got the Dutch. You've got a judge in Australia who's been called out the major children's hospital there. And in the United States, you've got gender clinics being shut down. Do you feel like there is a cultural tipping point, and that we're on that we can see the sunset to ending this madness?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's actually happened is, when we first met, there were no voices like mine. I was like the only voice that started. And so there was this one voice, but look at today. There's literally thousands of voices. So that what's happened is you had all these people talking about how good it was, and one saying it wasn't. Today, what we've come up with is now the voices are getting louder, and they're overshadowing the people who are going through it.
Yeah.
We're at the tipping point, and I think we're only maybe a couple of years away from seeing the real extinction of this. People I know in this country are going to have to go offshore to find the surgery. They're not going to be able to do it here. The government's not going to help them.
But it's even whistleblowers within the industry, like Jamie Reed.
Yes.
In Tennessee, was it? Was she
Yeah.
Tennessee?
Yeah.
So you've got actually people in the industry. The thing that's got me, Walt, is that how has virtually the whole medical profession and the medical bodies been so quiet on this, when they themselves should know that they're dealing with a ideology. I think it was Paul Zucker from Canada who said, we should heal the mind, not cut the body.
Right.
And he had performed gender surgeries, hadn't he? And he
Yes.
realised, he saw the light. But why is it that so many medical professionals have bought into this?
Well, because what happened, we've got a president in the White House today that will back you up. But we've had people in the administration that wouldn't back people up, and if a doctor would get fired for going against this, and today that's not going to happen. So I think what we're actually seeing, the government now is backing away from supporting it. We had the federal government in our country, and probably in yours, that supported it. They're finding out now, many of the states now are saying, okay, if the person, quote, detransitions or finds regret, then the government now has to pay them money, the state money. You got to pay them, you got to take care of them for the rest of their life because you caused the issue. So what's happening is medical malpractice is beginning to bring it down. That's one of the big issues, where that now medical malpractice insurance is so high, doctors don't want to do the surgery. That's one of the things that's coming. The litigation is so many people litigating it now, that's killing it. So it's going to go down because there's nothing good about it. And we've been speaking about this, you and me, for at least 10 years or longer. And so we're just seeing now the benefit of having someone who says there's only one man, one woman, and that's it. And we're not going to let men pretend to be women, get in sports. We're not going to pay for their surgeries. The clinics are closing. And people like myself now feel like they have a backbone. They can stand up and not be afraid of someone coming after them. And so I think we all need to understand that not one person has benefited long-term from this without suffering some consequence that they will come to me and say, this was the biggest mistake I've ever made. And some of them say, I wished I hadn't done it, but I'm so far in it, I don't even know how to come back. And that's true for many of them. They'll continue to live that way. And so this is a horrible thing that's happened to society and to families. It destroys families. It destroys children, dehumanizes, devalues, and destroys. Those are the three basic things it does. And when we look at it from that perspective, we realize that we should not be on the side of supporting, encouraging, or helping anyone move toward a hormonal change or surgical change. These people were made perfect in God's eyes. We need to support them and help them find their way back from the identity issue or whatever issue they're suffering and identify it. It's not gender dysphoria.
Well, just finally, I know you speak to a lot of churches, church leaders, even political leaders as well. Could you just give them a word of encouragement about the necessity? I mean, church leaders, you know, they're supposed to be communicating the love of God, that we can all come, that we're all sinners, that, you know, we all need saving. But at the same time, they also need to call out false theology and false ideology. What's your word of encouragement to church leaders, pastors, community leaders, just Christians in general who are watching this and saying, I want to speak up about this. I need to speak the truth into this issue, but at the same time, I don't want to come across as mean or nasty.
Well, one of the things about the truth is that it sounds mean and nasty. So, you know, there's this great divide about when you speak the truth, to some people it sounds mean and nasty. But there's sometimes we have to speak the truth even if it sounds mean and nasty. So I'm going to speak the truth even if it sounds mean and nasty right now. If we're going to honor and glorify Jesus Christ in what we're doing in our churches, we cannot say there is a transgender person. We can say there's a person who identifies as transgender. No one has ever transitioned from male to female or female to male biologically. So it's a falsehood for us to use that language. It's perfectly appropriate to say, I understand you're identifying as a female, but you know you can't become one, which means no one has ever transitioned. And what we find, as I explained in this book, and pastors should really have this book because it was actually written for the church. This was written for pastors. So what we realize is that if no one has transitioned, then no one really detransitions because actually it's all cosmetic. All we did is, it's like a movie actor playing a scene in a movie. They put makeup on him and make him look like the character he's playing. And so they use cosmetic surgery and hormones to amplify their appearance to make them look like they changed. But biologically, not one person has ever changed their gender. In our church, we should be explaining to them, you don't have a trans kid, no one has ever transitioned, and most likely it's not about gender dysphoria. And through the power and grace of Jesus Christ, which saved my life 35 years ago, that in 1990, when he came to me and redeemed and restored my life so that I could walk with him explaining the truth. And my doctor, Bob, I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but the surgeon who did my surgery and the doctor who approved me for surgery wrote a document to Superior Court of California in San Mateo explaining to the Superior Court when I was trying to restore my birth record back to Walt after it was female Laura Jensen. They wrote to the court in a document testifying that hormones and surgery does not change your gender. That's where I get the power to say this. It's not something I made up. It's the fact that the doctor, my doctor did 5,000 surgeries, and he's the one that said hormones and surgery Do not change your gender. What he used as a
I haven't read about that in the mainstream media.
No, right.
Funny that.
But what he testified to, he used a little different word, a little nuance. It's called morphology. It doesn't change your morphology. Now, morphology goes into plant life. It goes into all kinds. But what it means is that internally nothing changed. What it's a fancy way of saying when you have cosmetic surgery like they did on me, and you cut off body parts, it doesn't change you from a male to a female. If you give them a test, you're still going to be a biological male or a biological female. It doesn't change you. Isn't that? I mean, when we think about how we're supposed to speak the truth and how offensive that may sound to somebody that you went through this, but you didn't become, I realized that. I mean, that was hard to swallow. I've got body parts missing, right? And they did this. I lost my career. And I was an associate design engineer on the Apollo space missions, Mission 1, working in the area of cryogenics. I wasn't some street bum, right? But they convinced me that I needed hormones and surgery and destroyed my family, my children, and it took me years, 10 years after that before I found my current wife and found a way back. So just be aware, the churches need to speak the truth. There's no such thing as a transgender. There is such thing as a person who identifies as a transgender. Nobody has ever transitioned. They can identify as someone who did, and oftentimes it's really not about gender dysphoria. If we look under the hood and dig into their life and ask them what caused them to not like who they are, we'll find out some really good information. And get this book. Yes, it's an excellent
Look at that book. There we go. There's a challenge for everybody. Is this available on your website, Walt?
It's on the website. You can get it on Amazon.
Well, better to go onto your website because then they get to see all the other stuff on the website as well.
Yeah, the website is waltheyer.com.
And also sexchangeregret.com.
Right.
But waltheyer.com, that's easier to remember. My good buddy Walt Heyer, we'll have to get him back to New Zealand sometime, and always good to have you.
Yeah. You better hurry up. I'm 85 in October, so don't wait too long.
Oh, you still got 15 more years. That's okay, plenty of time. Hey, New Zealand, thanks for watching. Might get another speaker maybe in the next 24 hours or so. We'll catch you later.
Thank you.